Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to episode number 186 here on season number 2. And today we are getting in when should I buy on Stash in 2018. These videos are meant for educational purposes only and not meant to be taken as financial advice. You are responsible for your assets and to properly protect them. So always, please do your own research. Here's kind of like one thing about buying and then also selling is that a lot of people are like searching around, reading books, looking at different articles, looking around and trying to find the holy grail of investing, trying to find the holy grail of when to buy and when to sell. And obviously, I guess the best time to buy would be when the price of the stock is at its absolute low point, which would be maybe the last 10 years ago. Like, hey, we should have invested maybe into Apple in 2008 or even before that. So I guess that's the best time to buy, was maybe when the stock is at its absolute lowest point. And then from there, sell when it's at its absolute highest point. How do you go about figuring that out and predicting that into the future? Well, that's pretty much the impossibility of investing. And its absolute low is not like its 52-week low. It's not its like 2-year low. It's not its 10-year low. It's when the price of that stock was at its lowest point that it's ever been at. And then also capturing the growth, the upside of it being at its absolute highest point would be the ideal perfect investment. So I guess there are like a ton of different ideas to, first of all, buying and then secondly selling. Some of them, get pretty cuckoo, I would say. And then others obviously make a lot more logical sense. But for right now, I'm going to only focus on my buying strategy on Stash. So for me personally, what I do is I invest $20 bi-weekly into my Stash account. I have 4 ETFs and 1 single stock that I have target percents for. Well, right now on my Stash account, I actually only have 3 ETFs. I plan on adding one once the 3 ETFs have reached their target percents, and then obviously after that I'll add in 1 more single stock, and then from there I'll go ahead and purchase other stocks, but I'll get into that probably later on. But basically, if you're sitting there like, what the heck is a target percent, I'll kind of explain that real quickly. So for instance, I own Delicious Dividends. Delicious Dividends, I have a target of having that at 25% all the time on my account. And so when I make that, say I make that $20 bi-weekly deposit, well, Delicious Dividends happens to be at 24% when I make that bi-weekly deposit of $20. Well, then basically what I would do is buy Delicious Dividends with all that $20, bringing that up to like a 25% or maybe a 26% holding in Delicious Dividends. Well, if say Delicious Dividends was at 25%, then I would go ahead and look at Park My Cash being my second top holding. If that was at 24%, then I would put my $20 into Park My Cash, bringing that up to 25% or 26%, and then so on and so forth. If both of those were at 25%, then I would look into Real Estate Tycoon. If that one wasn't at 15%, then I would put that $20 into that one, bringing it up to that 15% or 16%. Or if it was, say it was at 10%, it would bring it up to maybe like 12 or 13%. And so then maybe the next deposit that I made in 2 weeks from that day would be going into that Real Estate Tycoon as well. So the reason why I execute this strategy is because it's basically a dollar cost averaging strategy paired with buying stocks at the lowest price relative to your overall account. With this buying strategy, this is pretty much what I use across the board on every single one of my accounts, except for when I take a swing trade out on Robinhood. Like dollar cost averaging, by the way, like there's probably a few videos that I've made, or you could just do a YouTube search on what is dollar cost averaging. Basically, dollar cost averaging is allotting a certain amount of money weekly, daily, monthly, at a regular period in time, making a regular investment of a regular amount of money into a stock. So for instance, that would be like putting $20 a week in Apple, regardless of price, on every Monday for the next 52 weeks or the next 5 years. That would be a dollar cost averaging strategy. So that's what I use on my account. And then I also pair it with buying the lowest producing or lowest performing ETF stock relative to my overall account. However, if I wasn't using this approach, then I would consider just doing a straight dollar cost average into the ETFs and stocks that I've deemed to be like worthy of my profile or portfolio. For instance, basically say I wanted a total of 8 holdings in my portfolio. Now this number is arbitrarily made up. I'm not saying that you should have only 8 holdings or that you should not have more than 8 holdings, or that you should not have less than 8 holdings. I'm saying that this is just pretty arbitrary and easy for math, and you'll see here in just a second. And then from there, I would go ahead and turn on something called auto stash on basically each one of those. And so for me, I only have basically allotted to invest $20 bi-weekly or $40 altogether a month. And so what I would do from there is go ahead and auto stash $5 into each one of those ETFs or stocks once a month on a certain day, and I would just go ahead and let that continue to run basically for the lifetime, or until I felt it was unnecessary to let that go anymore. That would be pretty much a straight dollar cost average, and that's what Stash really pushes, is basically making a regular small deposit into stocks or ETFs that you either support, believe, or want to see grow more or less. And then my last kind of approach that I might consider using, if I wasn't using my dollar cost averaging plus that like percentage kind of buying the lowest performing relative to the overall account, I would go ahead and, you know, do a straight dollar cost average, but go ahead and keep some of my cash liquid. And you're like, what's the purpose of that? I'll get into that here in just a second. This kind of approach would basically look like the straight dollar cost average, maybe picking 6 ETFs or equities or stocks, and then leaving $5 a month basically going into that stash cash. That would be for buying maybe on a big dip, or putting a lump sum of money into a specific investment into the future. For instance, maybe I like read an article and I'm like, hey, you know what? This analyst is saying that like Apple is looking really, really strong right now, and over the next 5 years, they've expected a whatever 25 to 30% return. And so I've got in my stash cash about $200 because I've been pretty much auto stashing that every single month for the last 2 years. And so you know what? I'm ready to throw that into Apple and let that kind of do its thing. So that would be like, I guess, the third strategy in using stash, specifically buying stock and equities. That would be, I guess, like if I didn't have my original setup, I would probably go with this strategy, because it does give you a little bit of freedom to maybe buy a stock that's underperforming, that you feel is undervalued or underpriced, and so you can go ahead and, you know, pick up AMD 6 months ago and go ahead and catch like 100% return or something like that. So there's that kind of added value that you can get just by, you know, going into like 7 ETFs and then adding that $5 into your stash cash. So I think that there is value in having some cash liquid. Me personally on Stash, I don't keep any cash liquid because I like the investments that I have, and that's not the strategy that I have on Stash. However, I do see value in having liquid cash. That's why on Robinhood, about 25% of my account is actually liquid. Also in this video, I was planning on talking about selling, but I think that I'm going to go ahead and save that for another video probably next week. And then I guess on the third week, I'll get into how I go about personally picking investments on Stash, how I go about picking investments that I would like to buy on Stash. We will go ahead and leave it right there. Let's jump into the question of the day. I guess, well, real quickly, I guess another strategy would just being buying whenever you want, but I don't know if that's really a strategy. It is a strategy because like not having a strategy is a strategy in and of itself. If you want to get like really philosophical, then we could go ahead and talk about that, but pretty much no strategy is still a strategy. I think that these 3 strategies offer more added value than just buying whenever it looks good or whenever you feel like buying. Anyways, go ahead and leave right there. Let's jump to the question of the day, which is, who's the worst guest you've had in your house and what did they do? Well, I have to kind of go back into like, I think like sophomore year of high school. I had a friend and he invited a friend of a friend over. So I had a friend that came down to visit. And he spent the night at my house, and then he brought also a friend along that I have no clue who he was. So, you know, we're like sleeping, getting ready to sleep, all that kind of stuff. It's like 11 o'clock. And this dude was like, hey, you know what? I got to go for a walk. And I'm like, okay, like, and he's like, do you got a spoon? And I'm like, I guess, like, if here's this, like, sure, I got a spoon. Like, I'm just trying to be the hostess of the mostest, right? And so it's like, here's a spoon. And next thing you know, he's off. And I'm like, and then my friend comes to me and he's like, hey, you know, where did he go? And I'm like, he went for a walk and he asked me for a spoon. He's like, no. He's like, I told him to not to do that while we were here. Like, he doesn't understand. Basically, he went to go cook, you know, some drugs. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what? Why do you need a spoon? He's like, he's a drug addict. And I was like, then why'd you invite him to the house? Like, why'd you tell him to not come? Something like that. And he's like, cause like we made an agreement that he wouldn't do that when when he got here, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, that's understandable. And he's like, but then he just like jumped off, and he's like, I have to go like yell at him now and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, so I guess that would be the worst guess. It wasn't like he was dirty or anything like that, just because it was like, I guess, disrespectful in that sense, like that he would first of all take advantage of my hostess of the mostest, and then go do that while sleeping over. Like I was like, are you kidding me? Like my mind still to wrap it around there. It's just like I'm like, what? Anyways, like I always say, if you got any questions regarding Stash, Acorns, Robinhood, M1 Finance, as well as general investing, business, Etsy, coaching, please post those questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe right up here. Check out these 2 videos right here in the link. And as always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I mean, come on, I was like 16. Like, I mean, I could understand it maybe even more now, but back then I was 16. Like, what?